was a reharmonized arrangement of the last 8 bars of a very simple tune that's often used for a first piano lesson. What I want to talk about in today's tutorial is a very common mistake that is made when harmonizing a scale passage using what Barry Harris called the major sixth diminished scale. Now, I'll come to that later on in the video, so I do hope that you'll wait and listen to that bit, because it is, as I say, a very common mistake that is made, and it's important to spot where it might happen and know how to avoid it. So first of all, let's just start off with a very basic version. You could harmonize this entire tune with 2 chords, just the tonic and the dominant 7th. C major chord in root position, the tonic, G7 the dominant, very simple voicing, 3rd, 7th and root. So you could play all of it with those 2 chords. So I'll just go through some of the steps that I took in the reharmonization and the arrangement. And as I say, there will be links in the description below to videos that I've made covering all these concepts. So the first thing I've suggested is to change the tonic chord to either a major 7th or a major 6th, and also to create inner movement by alternating between the major 7th and the major 6th. So for instance, in the first bar, if I voice the chord like that, so we've got the root, the 5th, the major 7th, the 3rd and the melody note. When I play the E on beat 3, I'm changing the major 7th to the major 6th. I'm putting another root in there as well. So that creates inner movement within the chord, but without actually changing the chord. I could enhance that by adding a 9th, which will then move to the root. So the 9th is D, that moves to C, the root, when the major 7th goes to A, the 6th. Now on the dominant chords, I'm adding an extra note. Dominant 7ths on their own are not as colourful as major minor 7ths, minor 7 flat 5 and so on. They need at least one upper extension or altered note. And the first one you would look at is, will the 9th work? Well, it does work with this melody. Bar 2, the melody note is F. I could harmonise that like that. So we've got the root, the 7th, A is the 9th, B the 3rd, F the 7th again. And again, we can create inner movement by the 9th, A, moving to the flattened 9th. If in bar 3, we can't start with C major 7 because the first melody note is the tonic, C. That would clash with the major 7th. So we're going to reverse it and start with the 6th, going to the major 7th, put the G9 in, going to the flat 9th again, and then do the same thing there. 9th to flat 9th, and do it just here as well. So with just those 2 little tweaks, it's already sounding quite a bit more colourful and more interesting because of the inner movement within the chord. The next step that I'm going to take is to reharmonise some of the chords. So in bar 1, I'm going to introduce chord 6, that's A minor 7 on beat 3. You can actually keep in the same inner movement. When I had the major 7th of C major going to the 6th and the 9th going to the root, I could play the same notes on the A minor 7. So the D is now the 11th of A minor 7 and the B is the 9th. And again, they both move downwards by a step. In bar 2, I'm preceding the dominant 7th chord with chord 2, D minor 7. That's a very common thing to do. When I get to the dominant 7th chord, I'm not going straight to the 7th chord, I'm playing a suspended chord first. Now I've written this as G11, you will see it as G suspended 4th. And again, I've covered this in other videos, I'll put a link below. It resolves then to the G7 and the 9th still goes down to the flattened 9th. In bar 4, I use the suspended chord again. Now this time the melody note, G, allows me to put the 13th in the suspended chord as well, E. So as well as the 9th going to the flat 9th and the 11th to the 3rd, I can have the 13th going to the flattened 13th. So I'll just play through that line again now with these added reharmonized chords. Okay, so now we come to the real point of this video, which is to talk about this mistake that is very often made when we're using the harmonies of the Barry-Harris diminished sixth scale. If you look at bar 3, it hits you straight away, oh, we've got a little scale passage here. We could use the Barry-Harris alternating major sixth with diminished seventh chords. However, it only works up to beat 3. It's fine here. That is fine, but that going to G11 doesn't really work. So why doesn't that work? We've got to remember that alternating the major sixth with the diminished sevenths works while you're still on the C6 chord or on an A minor 7 chord because they contain the same notes, but we're going to G11. So you've got to think to yourself again, why does it work anyway, this concept? And it's because the diminished seventh chord functions in the same way as the dominant seventh chord. In other words, if we played it like this, on beat 2, that's the diminished seventh chord. With G in the bass makes it a G7 with a flat ninth, and that's why it works. Tonic, dominant, tonic. Now, because in bar 2 we're going to a G chord, if we wanted to use a diminished seventh there, it would have to be the diminished seventh that comes from the dominant in the key of G. In other words, a D7. That's the diminished seventh that you would get by taking the root away from D7 with a flat 9. And that obviously isn't going to work with F in the melody. So let's look at 2 possible solutions. Well, I said first of all, it does work on the first 3 notes. So we can keep that, C6, D diminished, C6. Now, let's look at the F and say, we're going to the dominant chord G. Well, the logical chord there would be chord 2, which would actually fit. Or you could just play F6, that's chord 4, remembering that F6 contains the same notes as D minor 7. Just take the D away. And that would mean we are keeping that movement in the bass. Okay, that sounds okay, but it's not the best solution. There's another one, and again it involves keeping the C6 diminished 7th C6 on the first 3 notes, but with the bass going in contrary motion to the melody. So here we get C6, B diminished 7th, and then still the notes of a C6 chord, but it's now actually an A minor 7 chord. So that sounds quite nice. So now we've got to think, how are we going to get from there to the G11 chord? Well, the solution I used was to use a flattened fifth substitute, an A flat 7, which then drops to the G nicely. It works because the melody note F is the 13th of A flat 7. And if I put the 9th in there as well, so once again, that now becomes. So I hope that cleared that up. It is a very common mistake that people make. So you've got to think about, where is that diminished 7th chord taking you? If it's still taking you to the tonic or the minor 6, then that's fine. But if you go into a different chord, then you've got to look at a chord which approaches that chord properly. Hope you found that useful. If you did and you haven't subscribed yet, I'd be grateful if you did subscribe and give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.